For decades, the global debate over poverty alleviation has focused on two macroeconomic extremes. On one side, economists like Jeffrey Sachs argue that massive top-down financial injections are required to trigger development. On the other side, anti-interventionists argue that aid creates dependency. But this scatterplot, visualizing data from over 100 countries, reveals a missing link. There is no clear correlation between the amount of external aid a country receives and its subsequent rate of economic growth. These macro approaches often overlook the ground-level physics of human decision-making. By treating impoverished nations as uniform blocks of capital, they ignore the specific constraints that dictate how an individual family actually manages its resources. To understand the mechanics of these choices, we look to the research of MIT economists Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo. Their work discards grand, top-down economic ideologies. Instead, they rely on randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, to test specific interventions on the ground and map the precise microeconomics of scarcity. Mapping friction points within a single household allows us to rebuild development economics from first principles, identifying exactly where biological, human, and financial inputs succeed or fail. In this view, eradicating poverty is an applied behavioral science. It means identifying specific barriers preventing small, smart steps from leading to long-term growth. This chart illustrates the classic S-curve poverty trap, assuming individuals are stuck without a massive burst of resources. But empirical data reveals a different topography, an inverted L-curve. The highest productivity gains actually occur at the lowest levels of investment. We see this in nutrition. A common assumption is that the extremely poor prioritize maximizing their raw caloric intake as soon as income rises. A 1983 study in Maharashtra, India, tested this. When incomes increased, families did not buy more bulk calories. They spent extra money disproportionately on tastier, more expensive foods, or on non-food items like festival expenses and sugar. These choices provide immediate psychological utility. In an environment of constant uncertainty and repetitive labor, small luxuries offer a sense of normalcy and dignity. Consequently, the biological deficit holding back productivity is rarely a lack of raw calories. Instead, it is often a deficiency in micronutrients like iron and iodine, which are essential for cognitive and physical development. In Kenya, a deworming RCT showed administering pills cost just $1.36 per year, but resulted in a $3,000 lifetime income gain. This maps to the inverted L-curve's vertical spike. Strategic early interventions alter earning trajectories for decades. Optimizing biological inputs requires matching policy to actual behavior. Rather than subsidizing bulk calories, governments can achieve higher returns by fortifying preferred foods with the micronutrients required to raise baseline productivity. Shifting to healthcare infrastructure highlights how untreated illness directly converts into lost workdays and sudden debt, making medical stability a prerequisite for household capital accumulation. Historical data from the American South and Latin America shows that the eradication of malaria directly boosted the adult earnings of those who grew up in the newly disease-free regions by 50%. Yet a behavioral paradox remains. Across the developing world, families bypass free public clinics to pay out-of-pocket for expensive and often ineffective private healers. In Udaipur, researchers observed a 3-3-3 rule in public clinics: 3-minute visits, 3 questions asked, 3 medicines prescribed. This low-quality care breeds deep distrust. Private healers step into this void by offering visible, tangible treatments, such as medically unnecessary IV injections. These interventions satisfy a psychological need for immediate action, creating a powerful placebo effect. This demand for immediacy also explains low immunization rates. Completing a schedule requires parents to expend time and lost wages today for an abstract invisible benefit in the future. To solve this, researchers in Udaipur designed an RCT to combat present bias directly, making the future benefit feel worthwhile. Clinics offered a bag of lentils and steel plates for completing immunizations. This immediate material reward saw immunization rates rise from 6 to 38%. Healthcare failure is often driven by cognitive friction and present bias. By deploying simple, immediate incentives, policymakers can bypass that friction and secure long-term stability. This flowchart tracks an education paradox. Despite building schools and increasing enrollment, learning outcomes have flatlined. One friction point is teacher absenteeism. Research in India found 50% of public school teachers were absent during school hours. A second barrier is structural. Many school systems use curricula designed to filter for top students, rather than elevate the baseline, leaving those who struggle early to fall completely out of the system. The successful integration of Ethiopian Jewish immigrants in Israel demonstrates that when children from backgrounds with no formal education are placed in supportive, well-paced environments, their academic performance reaches parity with their peers. To fix the foundational learning deficit, researchers advocate for teaching at the right level. This involves using adaptive technology and focusing on basic mastery. Friction also exists within the home. Operating under strict budget constraints, parents often invest all educational resources into the one child deemed most promising, rather than spreading education across all children. This connects to family demographics. The economist Gary Becker proposed that smaller families result in higher investments per child, but in developing nations, large families can be a rational survival strategy. In the absence of state-backed pensions, children function as a decentralized old age insurance policy. Modulating population growth requires changing these underlying economic survival equations. In Peru, when land ownership rights were extended to include women as co-owners, fertility rates dropped. Human capital is built by aligning systemic incentives with the survival strategies of parents. Building schools and providing contraception are only effective if the underlying economic motivations of the household are addressed. The final layer is financial architecture, beginning with microfinance, small loans for impoverished individuals. It successfully undercut local moneylenders, but has largely failed as a tool for macroeconomic scale and long-term poverty eradication. Most loan recipients are necessity entrepreneurs. They open tiny businesses in saturated markets to survive, rather than opportunity entrepreneurs building scalable ventures. Predictable, waged employment provides a level of financial stability that micro-entrepreneurship rarely achieves. In regions with new manufacturing centers, households show improved long-term outcomes in child height and school attendance. The poor lack automated savings and must rely on mental accounting, such as stashing cash in separate envelopes to protect funds for future needs. This vulnerability reveals an insurance gap. Impoverished families face high volatility from weather and health shocks, but often reject private insurance due to high costs and deep-seated skepticism. Government intervention can bridge this trust gap. In Ghana, subsidizing weather insurance led to widespread adoption among farmers, demonstrating that reliability and low initial barriers can create a sustainable market for risk management. Financial tools fail the poor when they demand high cognitive load. Success requires designing defaults that absorb risk for the household rather than transferring it to them. Critics of micro-interventions often argue that localized efforts are useless as long as national corruption remains intact, but local agility can bypass federal gridlock. In Uganda, localized public information campaigns successfully bypassed the embezzlement of school funds, ensuring that subsidies actually reached the classrooms where they were needed. The research in poor economics shows that poverty forces individuals into a landscape of complex trade-offs, high risk, and cognitive exhaustion. The wealthy live in automated systems that make the right decisions for them. Clean water is piped in, retirement savings are deducted from paychecks, and immunizations are managed by pediatricians. The poor must fight for every one of those outcomes every day. The future of development involves removing that friction. By testing and scaling micro-defaults, we can build a world where navigating scarcity no longer requires an impossible level of effort.